What is up, guys? Delboy here. Kind of wanted to get this one out of the way. Gonna do a quick preview for Joseph Parker versus Dillian Whyte. I'll see at the end of the video if I want to make a prediction. Firstly, the fight it's a good fight on paper, it really is. It's one of those fights though where I was really kind of pleased when it was first announced, but as it's got closer, you know, I've struggled to get into it, I've got to be honest with you. And sometimes I'm like that with fights, but on the night when I'm watching it, I'm sure I'll get into it, and you know, I'm sure it'll be a good fight. Stylistically, I think this one is quite interesting. I think when you look at both guys, to me, Parker, he is the more technically correct boxer. He throws his shots relatively correctly. I think Parker has a better understanding of maintaining range. I think Parker defensively is a lot better than Dillian Whyte. And Parker, to me, is, I'd say, the harder puncher out of the two. Overall, I feel Parker is a more talented boxer with better fundamentals. And that is to be expected. You know, Parker, he was a pretty useful amateur. Whereas Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, you know, Dillian Whyte's amateur background was very limited. In fact, Dillian Whyte came from a kickboxing / MMA background. So obviously Parker chances are, is always going to be the more technically polished guy. Dillian Whyte, though, I think he does things that will give Joseph Parker trouble naturally. I feel Dillian Whyte has a much better work rate than Joseph Parker, and he can maintain it relatively well. Also, I like the fact that Dillian Whyte actually works the body. You know, not many heavyweights work the body, and I feel that body work could actually be a key for Dillian Whyte against Parker, because I've seen a lot of Parker's fights throughout the years, and, you know, I think Parker, stamina-wise, you know, he's a little bit questionable. I recall the Carlos Takam fight, where he was really blowing hard in that fight at times. You know, Takam, at times, was really giving Parker fits, you know. He was really working on the inside and getting the better of Parker, and Parker at times looked really uncomfortable with the pace that was being set. If Dillian Whyte could, you know, get up close and work the body and keep a high work rate and make it high octane, then Joseph Parker could struggle with that. You know, in recent fights, Joseph Parker, to me, has been far too passive, so I'm not sure how he would respond to such a fight if Dillian Whyte was really aggressive up close, banging the body, making it a rough, tough fight. I'd kind of worry how Joseph Parker would respond to that. But obviously, you don't just find yourself on the inside, you've got to get there. I don't think Dillian Whyte is that great at cutting the ring off. I don't think Dillian Whyte is great at slipping a jab. I don't think Dillian Whyte really jabs his way in that well either, you know. Getting on the inside or up close, you know, I think it could be a hard task for Dillian Whyte. To me, Dillian Whyte, you know, he's a very raw type of fighter. You know, defensively, he leaves all type of gaps. When he's swinging for the fences, he leaves all these openings for a good counterpuncher to capitalise on. You know, Joshua, at stages in their fight, was finding the target at will with his right hand because of all the gaps Dillian Whyte was leaving. He has improved since then, but, you know, Dillian Whyte is still a very aggressive fighter, still makes a lot of defensive mistakes, and mistakes that Joseph Parker has the ability to capitalise on. Parker does have good quick hands and decent power. You know, early on in his career, Parker was actually doing a really good job of being a counterpuncher. A lot of his early knockouts came from his opponent making a mistake, Parker countering with that right hand, and him getting the knockout. And I think Parker, you know, he's got the ability to do that, but in these big fights, Parker, to me, always seems more passive. He always seems more reluctant to throw those shots. And against Dillian Whyte, to me, they're going to be there. It's just whether Joseph Parker actually goes for them. Joseph Parker can't afford to be passive in this fight, because anything close is going to go to Dillian Whyte. Any close round, the judges are going to score to the home fighter. And Dillian Whyte has a style where they can get away with it because he does maintain quite a good work rate. Even if he's not really landing with much, you know, chances are they're going to give him the round for being the busier fighter. So I feel Parker in this fight, he needs to be a lot more aggressive, not reckless, but he needs to be more authoritative with his jab. He needs to be more consistent with the jab, and he needs to take those counterpunch opportunities because they're going to be there. Parker, The main thing to me, like I said, he needs to be consistent with the jab, and he needs to throw it out there often, and he can't be reluctant throwing that right hand. You know, I think ideally it would be beneficial if he hurt Dillian Whyte early on. You know, just to kind of set the stage, to kind of settle him down, to give him confidence for the rest of the fight. Technically, I just think Joseph Parker is a lot better boxer than Dillian Whyte, and if he gets it right on the night, he should beat Dillian Whyte. But that's the issue. I'm just not sure whether Joseph Parker is going to get it right on the night, because he didn't get it right against Joshua. You know, he didn't really get it right against Hughie Fury, although I felt he won it. He looked poor against Andy Ruiz and Carlos Takam. Again, too passive. So I don't hold out a lot of hope that Joseph Parker is going to get this right. I've not seen Joseph Parker perform really well at top 10 level. I think the best guy Joseph Parker's performed well against was actually Dimitrenko. So that's kind of worrying. But as for Dillian Whyte, I think Dillian Whyte needs to be Dillian Whyte. He needs to go out there with a high work rate. I feel he needs to build on the Lucas Browne fight. In that fight, Dillian Whyte finally done a good job of using his jab. I know Lucas Browne was basically a sitting duck, but it was good target practice at least. And I think Dillian needs to do a similar thing here. He needs to really work off that jab, set up all of his shots off the jab, and try and basically build the fight off the jab. Whether it's jabbing his way in or just trying to outwork Parker with the jab. He needs to use the jab at a high output, you know, because in the past I think Dillian Whyte has been guilty of abandoning the jab and just coming forward, wading forward, looking for big swinging hooks and looking for big body shots. I think Dillian Whyte has been guilty of that in the past and sometimes has been too aggressive for his own good. And we saw that against Robert Helenius, where he just kind of waded in with no jab, gets caught with a big shot and gets badly rocked. He can't afford to be doing that in this fight. You know, no coming forward with slow feet and not much head movement. Jab your way in. Feint with a jab. Move your head. You know, I want to see more subtleties from Dillian Whyte in this fight. I don't want to see Dillian Whyte just wade forward with big overhands, leaving himself exposed for counter shots and, you know, and looking clumsy. I want to see Dillian, you know, execute a pressure game plan more efficiently and in a more educated fashion. Because I think Dillian Whyte does have some attributes to be a good pressure fighter. Like I said, high work rate, good body puncher, actually quite astute on the inside, picks his uppercuts very well on the inside. You know, Dillian Whyte's got things going for him, but technically he just leaves a lot to be desired. Hopefully we can see some improvements in this fight in terms of his technical ability, in terms of his boxing IQ, in terms of how he sets his attacks up, in terms of how he gets on the inside, in terms of his footwork, etc, etc. You know, if he can make those adjustments, he is a very bad stylistic matchup for Joseph Parker. It's just the fact that he's so open defensively and he leaves so many gaps there. You know, I think this fight is going to be close. I think it's going to be close purely because Joseph Parker, to me, always strikes me as a guy with low confidence. And like I said earlier, I keep on saying it, but he's too passive. And I could see numerous different outcomes here. I could actually see Joseph Parker walking Dillian Whyte onto a big shot and getting a stoppage win. I could see Joseph Parker getting outworked and Dillian Whyte winning a points victory. I could also see Dillian Whyte winning controversially. Can't really see Dillian Whyte getting a stoppage win. But, you know, I think this fight is pretty good. I think it's well matched. I think it's a good style matchup also. And I'll be honest, I've struggled to really pick a winner confidently. And I'm still kind of umming and ahhing. But I think guns on my head, if I had to pick a winner, I'm going to go with Joseph Parker purely because I think he's a better technical boxer. I think he's more talented. He's got the greater amateur background. You know, I'm going to pick Joseph Parker. Whether that's by stoppage or points, I'm not really sure. But I'm gonna go with a Parker win regardless. Not really confident in that, and I could definitely see the other happening. So, what do you guys think? Peace.